Good morning and welcome back to Planet Althistory. Today we are going to discuss what if Romania remained communist. Romania after World War II and before the end of the Cold War was a Soviet satellite state. Romania got controlled by the Communist Party, and the most notable figure was of course Ceausescu. I have to admit that Ceausescu is a personality whom I find very interesting. Not interesting in the sense of an idol, but as a historian I find him just interesting. Ceausescu was very different from other communist leaders in Eastern Europe, and for good reason. The fear of a Soviet intervention. Romania bordered the USSR, Yugoslavia, Bulgaria and Hungary. Bulgaria at one point wanted to be part of the USSR. Yugoslavia had a few issues with the USSR, especially when they had the Tito-Stalin split. Hungary had an intervention. The USSR had Moldova, which even until now considers itself as somewhat Romanian or at least closely related to Romania, and then Czechoslovakia and Hungary, which saw Soviet tanks rolling in 68 and 56 respectively. Romania was in a very difficult spot, and it's no surprise that Ceausescu even criticized the intervention in Czechoslovakia. Not because of sympathies alone, but because of the fear of the Soviets that they could just intervene in Romania at any given moment. Yugoslavia and Albania had no direct borders with the Soviets, while Romania had the Soviets basically sitting on their neck. And Bulgaria wanted to be part of the USSR. So the fears, they were not totally irrational, hence why Ceausescu pursued a somewhat independent foreign policy. He had good relations with the West and also established good ties with North Korea. He got inspired by Kim Il-sung and established his own cult of personality because of it, and got accepted into some institutions such as the IMF, even tried improving relations with China, and let's also not forget the natalist policies of Romania. Ceausescu's goal was it to have 30 million people. This explains why, especially in the 90s, there was a huge problem with orphans in Romania, as many parents, they just couldn't take care of their kids. And they were also not to blame, because protection was banned after all. In the last years of Ceausescu's predecessor, the Soviet troops, they already left the country, and Romania was more independent than other states of the Warsaw Pact. Ceausescu was also known for his megalomania. The heaviest building of the world was built during his reign. He was obsessed about getting Romania debt-free. His wife had many titles despite not even entering a university. And as every good dictator, he had his own secret police, the Securitate. During his final speech, shots were fired from the crowd, and already one day after, Ceausescu and his wife were killed by their own men. But what if all of that changed? What if Romania remained communist? Of course, we are having a huge problem here. Romania staying communist would imply that the USSR would need to survive or even win the Cold War. However, in this timeline, we will not include the Soviet Union that wins or survives. Let's see what happened with other communist states. Well, China survived communism because they made a successful economic transition. Vietnam could also be put into the same category. But then we also have Cuba and North Korea, and they seem to be a good fit for Romania in this case, especially North Korea. Okay, yes, China kept North Korea alive, but in the beginning, initially, China was not really a big partner of North Korea. And let's also not forget that North Korea had a very totalitarian system. Cuba wasn't as totalitarian as North Korea, it was still communist, and it also survived nonetheless. And with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the dissolution of the Warsaw Pact, Comecon and other aids from the Soviet Union. Both countries, they faced hardships, and they also had no many resources. So if countries like North Korea and Cuba could remain communist after the end of the Cold War, Romania would have a small chance of remaining communist as well if everything went right. So let's just assume that Ceausescu wouldn't go totally nuts in eliminating all foreign debt immediately. Instead of being in, let's say, 1989 debt-free, Romania in this timeline would be debt-free around the early 90s. This would open up some more funds for the Securitate, the army, the police, the party official, and also corruption money, which would be very needed. And also some spare money to buy food for the population as well. The standards of living wouldn't rise that much, but people would have slightly more than in OTL. Ceausescu would also increase pensions as he wanted to do one day before his death. But in here he would already do it a bit earlier, about 2 or 3 years, let's say. Again, it wouldn't be much, but enough to suppress or crack down on smaller rebellion, with more loyal troops and more people who just wouldn't care. The next point we need to address is the successor. Would it be a son of Ceausescu? Yes, but in this timeline we could take Ceausescu's son Valentin as successor. Valentin seems to be the most promising because he was a physicist, liked sports, had some discipline and didn't smoke unlike his sister, and didn't have a problem with alcohol and violence, unlike his brother Nicu. In this timeline, Valentin would respect his father's wishes and marry someone else. And as a result, he would then not move to Canada, and he would become the successor of Nicolae Ceausescu. What's up, guys? Sorry for the little interruption, but I'm sure you have noticed that on my channel I have many videos that are scheduled for like 1 week, 2 weeks, or even 3 weeks. If you are really impatient, if you can really not hold yourself, and if you really must see these videos, please subscribe on my Patreon. There are various options which you can take. I'm sure you will find the most adequate option for yourself. And also please go down, check the links below for my Facebook page and also for my TikTok as well as for my Twitter account. And now let's go back to the alternate history video. Valentin wasn't hated by the people, unlike Nicu, and may even have been smarter in politics than his other brother. He may even have some type of popularity because of his hobby and official support in football and of Steaua Bucharest. So where does it leave us? The population, of course, would still demand changes, and some reforms they would have been made. Ceausescu was already a very old man, and when pressured, he could give in. So instead of the same speech as in OTL, he would have announced reforms similar to the ones made by Gorbachev, or maybe reforms that would be mostly economic in nature. He would step down and Valentin would take charge, most likely. His siblings, they would also get some positions here and there, but he would mostly rule and maybe ask his father here and there for some advice. The cult of personality may already be present around Valentin, and after some time Romanians would hear about the war in Moldova and also the war in Yugoslavia. This would actually have a very positive effect for the regime. The regime could then make some propaganda stating that abandoning communism would bring war. And furthermore, there was also the Chechen war in Russia, and Russia was very unstable. So it's true that not every Romanian would now be totally backing the regime, but people would prefer the stability, the peace that they have, than some type of war. So in order to boost even its popularity, Romania could support Moldova against Transnistria, and consequently Transnistria would never exist, and without NATO, yet in the region Romania may even annex all of Moldova or have it as a puppet state. The situation could be similar as Syria and Lebanon before the civil war. Romania would financially be in a very good spot, because they would have also peace, they would have expanded even their reach, and they would by now also have concluded treaties with Ukraine, remain neutral with Serbia, and also remain on good terms with Bulgaria. Romania had some oil which it could sell, and with the pre-work of Valentin's father, the relations with the West wouldn't be that bad yet. If Valentin wouldn't be too corrupt, things could move forward in Romania and a lot of infrastructure would be built, especially for children. Or it's also possible that protection would be reintroduced slowly but surely. Romania's population would be higher than in OTL and perhaps even already reach the 30 million mark if they choose to annex Moldova. The brain drain would also be prevented in some forms or another due to the closed borders, and things would potentially even be better for some time than in OTL. At the end of the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s, the West would look at Romania in not such a positive way. After having dealt with Yugoslavia, Romania and Valentin would be the next target on the NATO hit list. Romania would look for allies elsewhere and may, in a surprising move, deal more with Russia. Russia would be away from the Romanian border nowadays, Transnistria wouldn't exist in this timeline anymore, and Putin would welcome a country like Romania as a potential ally. With some careful negotiations, Russia would use Romania as a bridge to connect with Serbia. Romania would get integrated in a more Russian alliance system, and the tensions with Hungary and NATO would be high. Yes, this Romania would be communist in all but name. Yet the geopolitical situation would be very different. NATO would now heavily arm Hungary, Bulgaria, and provocations against Romania could erupt. Perhaps a movement in Transylvania could be used against the Communist Party by NATO, and Valentin would be forced to expand the army aggressively, but also expand the economy as fast as possible. Would Valentin Ceausescu even have to ask or request Russian intervention and bases in Romania? Would this communist Romania survive, or would the Hungarian minority be the downfall of the last Ceausescu? Would this Romania actually become more dependent of Russia than it was during the times of the Soviet Union? And that's where we leave it for now.
That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, support me also on Patreon, and join my forum, forum.planetalthistory.ga. Until next time on Planet Alt History.